On our 30th wedding anniversary, I was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer, yet my high-ranking official husband handed me divorce papers. Let's divorce. I'll leave with nothing. All the family's money will be left for your treatment. Why? I demanded, my voice hoarse with emotion. The husband replied indifferently, you cannot pass away under the name of my wife, otherwise Nova would only be able to become my second wife. Nova is too proud. She couldn't bear such humiliation. I spat out a mouthful of dark blood and unwillingly closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I had returned to my wedding night. 23-year-old Noxu said to me, Shun, I can marry you, but I won't touch you. I promised Nova to remain chaste for her for the rest of my life. I nodded, then let's get divorced. On the wedding night, the noisy banquet finally came to an end. Noxu sat in an armchair, looking at me with a serious expression. Shun, let's talk, you know. Nova and I were forced apart by our families. I can't forget her. I can give you status, I can give you all my salary, but I can't give you myself. I promised Nova to remain chaste until she comes back for me. Hearing the familiar conversation, my mind went blank for a moment. I had actually been reborn on my wedding night, the day my husband Noxu laid his cards on the table with me. In my past life, naive and inexperienced, I was moved by his tragic love story with Nova Chen and agreed without a second thought, because Noxu told me that if he didn't find someone to fake a marriage with, his family wouldn't let Nova Chen off the hook. At that time, Nova Chen was a capitalist's daughter sent down to the countryside for re-education, while Noxu was the Yu family's only male heir in 3 generations, a much-anticipated third-generation military scion. The Yu family, for the sake of Noxu's future, absolutely refused to let him marry a capitalist's daughter. To appease Noxu, the Yu family agreed that, aside from Nova Chen, he could marry anyone he wanted as long as the woman's class background was good. In the end, Noxu chose me, because my family had been poor peasants for 3 generations. My class background was impeccable, because I came from the countryside, naive and simple, easy to manipulate. But in this life, Noxu, I don't want to be a part of your tragic love story anymore. I raised my head and looked at him calmly. I understand. Then, please accompany me to the commune tomorrow to finalize the divorce procedures. Noxu stared at me in astonishment. Why? I smiled, revealing deep dimples. Because I was also forced to marry you. There's someone in my heart too, but that person, just like your Nova, right now, I can't marry him. For a moment, I saw Noxu's expression, as if he had swallowed a live fly. I secretly sneered. What? So you're allowed to have a white moonlight in your heart, and I'm not allowed to have a cinnabar mole in mine? Hearing me say that there's also someone in my heart, Noxu tugged at the corner of his mouth, revealing an ugly smile. Is that so? Well, that's good too. This way, we're even. But let's forget about divorce for now, since you can't marry him anytime soon anyway. I shook my head firmly. No, he has strong self-esteem. And I don't want people to say he was the third party who came between our marriage. Noxu's expression darkened even more, and he was about to say something. I had already picked up the large floral dowry quilt. I'm afraid he might get jealous later. Tonight, let's sleep in separate rooms. Seeing the stunned expression on Noxu's face filled me with immense satisfaction. In this lifetime, you too shall experience the loneliness of an empty bed and sleepless nights. The next morning, I woke up to a cold stove and an empty kitchen. I didn't even prepare breakfast. Noxu froze for a moment before forcing a bitter smile and saying, even if it's just for show, shouldn't we at least act like a married couple? You should at least prepare 3 meals a day. Otherwise, with a cold stove and empty pots, what kind of impression does that give? Yes, that's exactly what the foolish me from my past life, used to think. In my past life, in order to cover up the illicit love between Noxu and Nova Chen, I endured the heartache, like a dutiful wife, buying groceries, cooking, doing laundry, and mopping the floor every day. I kept my little family with Noxu in perfect order. But in reality, after work each day, Noxu and I were like 2 roommates sharing an apartment. We ate dinner in silence, then retreated to our separate rooms. A full 3 years, Noxu kept his promise to his white moonlight and didn't lay a finger on me. 3 years later, my father-in-law was hospitalized with liver cancer, and my mother-in-law was also in poor health. Under the pressure of public opinion, as their daughter-in-law, I had no choice but to quit my job and return home to take care of them. Little did I know that this caregiving would last for 12 years. My father-in-law's liver cancer dragged on for 3 years before he passed away, and soon after, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with a tumor. Those years, I accompanied my in-laws, taking care of their every need in the hospital, feeding them, helping them with daily necessities, until I lost over 30 pounds from exhaustion, so thin that a gust of wind could have blown me away. But when I finally bid farewell to my in-laws and returned to the military compound, I discovered that the home that once belonged to Knox Yu and me had already been taken over by his white moonlight, Nova Chen. That evening, I stood at the doorway, watching Knox Yu, dressed in a crisp military uniform, open the passenger door of the Jeep. With gentle eyes, he extended his hand, and Nova Chen, wearing a stylish khaki trench coat, gracefully stepped out of the car, taking his hand. Seeing me standing at the door, Knox Yu panicked for a moment. Why are you back? I forced an awkward smile and said, "This is my home. Why can't I come back?" Everyone in the courtyard turned to look. Nova Chen, humiliated and furious, roughly shook off Knox Yu's hand, covered her face, and ran out crying. Knox Yu glared at me with a face full of rage, shouting uncontrollably, "Shun, don't think that just because you've served my parents all these years and took care of them in their old age, I'll be grateful to you or fall in love with you. I told you on our wedding day that the person I love is Nova Chen. You and I are just a fake couple in name only." That night, neither Knox Yu nor Nova Chen came back. In truth, if he had waited just one more minute, he would have known that this time I came back not to be his wife. "I just want to take my things. By the way, tell him that now that his parents are no longer here, there's no one left in this world to stand in the way of him and Nova Chen being together. I want to part on good terms with him and take this opportunity to finalize our divorce. Let him and Nova Chen, those star-crossed lovers, be together openly and without shame. I also want to tell him that all these years, although I have harbored resentment toward him, there has been no hatred, even though he left me in a living widowhood for 30 years, but because of him, I have been an officer's wife for 30 years, enjoying the benefits of a military family for 3 decades. Even my mother-in-law, before she passed away, held my hand and said that all these years, the Yu family had wronged me. My mother-in-law said that if I didn't want to stay with Knox Yu anymore, I should just divorce him. She left me $5,000 and a house, so even if we divorced, I wouldn't be homeless. I had already made up my mind to part with him amicably, but somehow, Knox Yu seemed possessed, convinced that my taking care of his parents in their old age was just a ploy to morally bind him, ensuring he could never divorce me in this lifetime. In our past life, we misunderstood each other just like this. For the sake of Nova Chen's reputation, he applied for a transfer and took his beloved white moonlight far to the borderlands. I stayed in our hometown, enduring endless gossip, and in the end, I developed stomach cancer. Even on my deathbed, I was forced into a divorce. As my thoughts returned to the present, I picked up the household register and the marriage certificate I had just obtained the day before, once again urging Knox Yu to go with me to get the divorce certificate. Who would have thought that Knox Yu, who kept telling me not to be infatuated with him, would actually drag his feet and refuse to go? I patiently explained, "Don't worry, it's just a secret divorce certificate. During holidays, or when your parents visit, I'll still keep my promise and pretend to be a fake couple with you." Knox Yu irritably interrupted me, "No way. Do you think a military marriage can be dissolved just like that? If we divorce, we have to report it to the military. Once the report is submitted, my parents will definitely find out." Shun, are you deliberately trying to kill Nova? I was stunned for a moment, never expecting that getting a divorce would require reporting to the military. Seeing me speechless, Knox Yu's stern face broke into a faint smile. He reassured me, saying, "Don't worry about your innocence. I've already transferred Nova to the military hospital. From now on, both Nova and I will stay with the military. You'll be living at home alone." My eyes lit up. "So can I bring someone home to stay?" Knox Yu's smiling face suddenly froze. "Why you want to bring that man into our home?" I nodded vigorously. "Don't worry, I won't cheat on you. To outsiders, I'll just say he's my brother." Knox Yu opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. I knew he wanted to say that men and women should maintain boundaries and that I shouldn't get too close to other men, But just moments ago, it was he who first mentioned living in the military base with his first love, Nova Chen. Now you won't let me bring someone back either. Isn't that a case of contradicting yourself? Seeing him so angry he looked about to explode, I suppressed a laugh and deliberately said to him, "If you think bringing someone to the military compound will stir up gossip, then how about you give me some money to rent a place outside for him to stay?" Noxu was stunned for a moment, then instantly exploded like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "El Shin, you actually want to use my money to support some random man outside?" Watching Noxu's frantic expression, I patiently explained again, "Li Jianfeng isn't some random man. He's the one I love. If it weren't for their family's terrible background that my parents absolutely refused to accept, I wouldn't have had to enter this fake marriage with you." The same words, when spoken by Nova Chen, made Noxu think I was considerate and sensible. But when directed at Li Jianfeng, Noxu's expression looked as if he'd just eaten a pile of shit. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. In my previous life, I had once hinted to Noxu that he should maintain an appropriate distance from Nova Chen. After all, he was still my husband in name, yet he was entangled with his single, unattainable love. If word got out, not only would it embarrass my in-laws, but it would also negatively impact his future. But back then, what did Noxu say? "El Shin, don't use your small-minded, vulgar thinking from the countryside to insult the relationship between me and Nova. Though we admired each other, we never crossed the line. Nova and I share nothing but a pure comrade-in-arms relationship." Now, I returned those exact words to him. "Noxu, I told you. My relationship with Jianfeng is purely platonic comradeship. Although we admired each other, we never crossed the line. If you really don't believe me, then let's get a divorce." The current Noxu is not yet the decisive military commander he would become 30 years later. Fearing that his parents might harm Nova Chen, Noxu didn't dare to actually divorce me. Taking a deep breath, Noxu's face turned livid as he pulled out a dozen big unity bills from his coat pocket and threw them at me in a fit of anger. "Take this to support your bastard man, and hide him far away. I don't want to see him." With the money in hand, I left the family compound without looking back. The sound of a glass shattering on the floor came from behind. But what reason did he have to be angry? After all, it was he himself who proposed this fake marriage with me, having been reborn. I no longer wish to waste my life away in the Yu family. I'm going to save the man who, in my past life, gave me the last bit of warmth after my death. In my previous life, Noxu insisted on divorcing me before I died. I knew he didn't want me to enter the Yu family's ancestral grave, even in death. He wanted to reserve that spot beside him for the woman he truly loved. After my death, my husband's family wouldn't let me in, and my own family wouldn't take me back. I almost became a lonely ghost buried in an unmarked grave. It was Li Jianfeng, the man to whom I had once given a few wild vegetable buns. Under the pretense of being husband and wife, he spent money to buy me a burial plot. Thinking of my past life, when that man personally carved the words "Li Jianfeng's wife" on my tombstone, my heart ached with bitterness and sorrow. Li Jianfeng is currently locked up in a cowshed for speculation and profiteering. I spent a bit of money and just mentioned my in-laws' names. Within half a day, Li Jianfeng was released from the cowshed. "Brother," my shout completely stunned Li Jianfeng. Fortunately, he recognized me. All the detainees said he was lucky. If I hadn't come today, Li Jianfeng would have been sent down to the farm tomorrow. On the way back, Li Jianfeng gave me a teasing glance. Since when did I suddenly gain a younger sister? Blushing, I found myself at a loss for words to explain. After all, at this time, Li Jianfeng and I weren't even acquaintances, let alone him buying a burial plot for me. Seeing me blush and stay silent, Li Jianfeng thought he had gone too far with his joke and quickly apologized to me. "Comrade El Shin, such great kindness needs no words of thanks. From now on, you're like a sister to me. If anyone dares to bully you, just say the word. I'll go through fire and water without hesitation." I looked up. "Really? Then can you pretend to be my partner?" I rented a small courtyard for Li Jianfeng 3 streets away from the military family compound. In my past life at this time, I foolishly kept my promise, washing clothes and cooking for Noxu every day. In the family compound, we played the role of a loving newlywed couple. In this lifetime, I no longer wished to gloss over the truth for Noxu and Nova Chen. Noxu took the meat, eggs, and milk provided by the military and diligently delivered them to Nova Chen to nourish her health. As for me, I used the rice, flour, and oil from my workplace to personally cook a pot of jajang noodles, Li Jianfeng's favorite dish. Noxu used his salary and ration coupons to take Nova Chen shopping at the Supply and Marketing Cooperative, watching movies and dining out. I took my salary and the receipts, bringing Li Jianfeng to the scrapyard. The Li family used to run a pawn shop, so his eye was particularly sharp. He could always pick out quite a few treasures from a pile of junk. At first, Noxu was quite happy because I never questioned where he went or who he was with. After marrying me, he could still spend time with his white moonlight, Nova Chen, just as he had before, but it wasn't long before he took the initiative to talk to me. We can't go on like this between us. Don't you see that our home is becoming less and less like a home? I remained silent. Noxu will never know that in my past life, I truly considered this place my home. Noxu talks a good game, saying he'll give me his salary and shower his white moonlight with love, but in reality, he only gave me his salary the first month. After that, I never saw a single penny of his earnings again. His salary and receipts all turned into movie tickets for Nova Chen, face cream, dresses, and all sorts of fresh candies and pastries. Only me, like a fool, saved every penny of my salary to furnish this home with new furniture, bedding, curtains, and dishes, turning what was once a cold dormitory into a warm little home. The meat coupons, sugar coupons, and egg tickets issued by the workplace, I saved them all too. I waited until Noxu came back on vacation to buy meat and eggs, making all sorts of delicious dishes for him. Noxu told me not to indulge in wishful thinking, yet at the same time, he complacently enjoyed all the contributions I made to this home. It's just a pity that the foolish El Shun from the past life is already dead. In this life, I no longer care whether the house feels warm and lively, nor do I care if Noxu will be cold or hungry when he comes back on vacation. I moved all the things from my workplace to Li Jianfeng's place. He eats there every day before coming back. Noxu always thought that when he was home, at least during holidays, he could have a hot meal waiting for him. But what greeted him was the cold lock on the door. When he opened the door, the house was deserted. As if no one had lived there for a long time, the thermos flask was empty, and the coal stove by the door seemed like it hadn't been used for a long time. Thinking I had left the family compound, he hurriedly went to ask the neighbor next door. Unexpectedly, the neighbor said, "Your wife, she went to her brother's place. She said you weren't home, and she couldn't finish cooking for just herself. So now she cooks at her brother's place and comes back after eating." Noxu was seething with anger inside, sitting in the house and waiting until late in the evening before he saw me sitting on the back of a bicycle. Li Jianfeng rode the bicycle and brought me back. After that day, Noxu seemed like a completely different person. He no longer used work as an excuse to stay at the military base all day, mingling with his white moonlight. Even like other cadres in the family compound, he would bring home 2 dishes from the canteen after work. Along with a bag of steamed buns, he also bought 200 coal briquettes for the house. Every day after work, he would use the coal stove to reheat the dishes and steamed buns he had brought. Then, like a devoted husband, he would wait for me to come home from work to eat together. If it were me from my past life, I would have been moved to tears, completely falling into this man's sweet trap. But now, facing Noxu's deliberate attentiveness, I simply responded with the same cold tone he had used in our past life. "Comrade Noxu, don't forget, we're just a nominal couple in name only. My heart belongs only to Brother Jianfeng. Please don't entertain any unrealistic fantasies about me." With a loud crash, the coarse porcelain bowl filled with porcelain fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Noxu froze for a moment, then lowered his head and silently fetched a broom and dustpan. Carefully sweeping up the shattered porcelain pieces and the dust-covered porridge from the floor, seeing me stubbornly sitting nearby, refusing to eat the food he had brought back from the cafeteria, Noxu let out a bitter laugh. "Sorry, I overstepped. I just didn't expect you to really like that man so much. I thought, since you agreed to a fake marriage with me, perhaps you also felt a little. In short, what happened today was my fault, and I apologize to you. From now on, I won't interfere with your affairs with that man anymore." I raised my head and looked at him calmly. "It's best that you think this way. After all, our relationship was originally just an agreed-upon fake marriage. However, if it really bothers you to see me, I can move to Brother Jeanfeng's place. We can just tell others that you're not home and I'm scared to stay here alone. No need, don't move there. Noxu suddenly stood up in agitation. Don't move. I'll return to the barracks tonight and leave this place to you. Noxu lowered his head, his eyes fixed intently on my face, as if trying to detect even the slightest hint of reluctance in my expression. However, he realized that at this moment, there wasn't the tiniest trace of reluctance on my face. Instead, there was even a sense of relief and happiness. At this moment, he discovered with immense frustration, his nominal wife seemed, truly, not to like him at all, that evening. Noxu left me 50 yuan, along with 2 jin of meat coupons, 1 jin of sugar coupons, and a few fabric coupons. Then, he returned to the military base overnight, seeing that Noxu didn't even spend the night at home during his leave. The neighbors looked at me with expressions ranging from mockery to pity. Our neighbor, Sister Liu, kindly reminded me, your husband Deputy Battalion Commander Yu is so handsome, with such a bright future and excellent family background. There are countless women out there eyeing him. You must keep a tight rein on him. It's best to take advantage of your youth and quickly give him a son, lest some vixens snatch him away. By then, you'll be crying your eyes out. I smiled and explained that Noxu had indeed gone to work overtime at the unit, not to fool around with women. Elder Sister Liu clearly didn't believe me. The way she looked at me was as if I were a complete fool. From that day on, Noxu indeed kept his promise and never came back. However, every month, he would send me half of his salary and various bills through others. I accepted them all without refusal. After all, this was what he owed me from his past life. In the blink of an eye, the time came when my former father-in-law was hospitalized with liver cancer. Upon receiving the telegram, Noxu immediately drove over to pick me up. However, this time, he couldn't bring himself to demand, as he had in the past life, that I quit my job and return to his hometown to take care of his parents as a matter of course. Noxu and I stayed in his hometown for 3 days. Before leaving, Noxu took out a bank book and asked his mother to hire a caregiver for his father. My mother-in-law glanced at me, her eyes seemingly somewhat displeased, and tentatively asked, "Your father is so seriously ill, and neither of you can stay." The implication in my mother-in-law's words was obvious. Noxu is now a deputy battalion commander, at a critical moment for meritorious service and promotion, so of course he can't take a long leave to come back and take care of his father. She was hinting at me to voluntarily offer my resignation or take unpaid leave to come back and serve my father-in-law. I glanced at Noxu. He somewhat guiltily turned his head away, avoiding my gaze. In my previous life, this was exactly how I was emotionally blackmailed by my in-laws' tears and the gossip around me, ultimately trapped in the Yu family's old residence, living as a grass widow for a full 12 years. In this life, I won't be so foolishly manipulated by others anymore. After all, I'm not the real daughter-in-law of the Yu family. If the in-laws want their daughter-in-law to come back and serve them, they should go find Nova Chen. My mother-in-law is an educated person and wouldn't act like a wicked mother-in-law, but she kept hinting at me with her eyes. I pretended not to notice and said firmly, "I've made up my mind to sacrifice my small family for the greater good, to dedicate my life to the socialist cause. I can't abandon my work to come back and take care of the elderly. However, as a daughter-in-law, I still must fulfill my filial duties." So, I told my mother-in-law that from now on, I wouldn't take a single penny of Noxu's salary or any of the vouchers issued by his unit. He should send all of it back to be used for hiring a caregiver for his father and for buying medicine and medical treatment. I kept my word. The very next month, I stopped accepting the money and vouchers Noxu sent back through others. However, Nova Chen, the capitalist's daughter accustomed to a life of luxury, would likely find her days less comfortable without the supplement of this half salary. In this life, I didn't have to slave away for the Yu family or serve my in-laws. I had more time to go treasure hunting with Li Jianfeng in various places. We took money and food coupons to some remote commune recycling stations. With just a little money, we managed to acquire many out-of-print books, damaged antique paintings and calligraphy, as well as some artifacts that others had used as broken pots for planting vegetables. We also used the money we earned to rescue many master restorers of antiques and ancient books who were still undergoing reform in the cowsheds. With their help, we created many counterfeit artifacts that were so convincing they could pass for the real thing. We sold the fakes at high prices to foreigners. They are all truly kept within the country. In this chaotic era, we do our utmost to carefully protect the cultural relics that belong to our nation. We strive to ensure that decades from now, China will have fewer regrets about cultural relics unable to return home. When things get busy, I simply stay at Li Jianfeng's place. Until I didn't return home for several days in a row, Noxu suddenly came looking for me. He saw me and Li Jianfeng with our heads close together. Carefully flipping through a rare, incomplete book, Noxu walked in with a dark expression, gritting his teeth as he questioned me. El Shun, is this what you call being completely innocent with him? Not crossing the line even half a step. I just came from the family quarters, and they said you haven't been home for several days. You're not with him, are you? I impatiently cut off his speculation. Comrade Noxu, whatever relationship I have with Comrade Li Jianfeng, it seems none of your business, right? Don't forget, between us, it's just a marriage in name. A sham. Noxu gritted his teeth and growled in a low voice, a fake couple is still a couple. How can you be so unfaithful, a man and a woman alone, staying out all night? What will people think of me? I stood up, meeting his gaze without backing down. Only now do you realize that when a man and a woman are alone, staying out all night, people will gossip. Then what about when you abandoned your newlywed wife to stroll under the moonlight with your Nova, watching movies, shopping at department stores, and rowing boats in the park? Did you ever stop to think about how people would see me then? Noxu, you care so much about whether I've cheated on you. Could it be that you've developed feelings for me instead? My words struck Noxu like a hammer to the face. Instantly, his expression turned unusually grim. He wanted to say he was deeply in love with Nova Chen and could never possibly shift his affections to another woman. But El Shun is his lawfully wedded wife Tilda. Isn't it only natural for a husband to fall in love with his own wife? Or perhaps, what he feels for El Shun isn't actually love, but merely because she's his nominal wife, and thus has unconsciously developed some strange sense of possessiveness towards her. Exactly, no matter what. El Shun is his properly married wife, and military marriages are protected by law. Taking a deep breath, Noxu forced a smile and said to me, I was wrong about what happened before. I didn't consider your feelings or reputation. Come back with me first. I promise I'll try to go out alone with Nova less often from now on. I'll also give you the respect you deserve. Let's continue living together like before, okay? Looking at Noxu's pleading eyes, I suddenly had an almost absurd thought. Could it be that he's really developed feelings for me? Just then, Li Jianfeng spoke up. Comrade Noxu, I'm afraid that won't be possible. As you know, Elle and I love each other. Deep down, I don't want to see Elle living with another man. As a man, I think you can understand how I feel, right? Noxu suddenly clenched his fists, glaring sharply at Li Jianfeng. His tone was icy as he said, Comrade Li Jianfeng, no matter what relationship you and Elle once had, please remember this. As long as El Shun and I have not officially filed for divorce, she remains my lawful wife. Li Jianfeng chuckled lightly. Then I'll wait. Wait for the day you divorce Elle. Noxu stormed out in anger, slamming the door behind him. The next day, an urgent telegram arrived from our hometown. Father-in-law had passed away in the hospital after failed resuscitation efforts. Noxu drove over to pick me up for the funeral. All the way, I was in a daze. I never expected that in this lifetime, without my meticulous care, my father-in-law's late-stage liver cancer couldn't even last half a year. Just like that, he was gone. At the funeral hall, watching my mother-in-law cry until she fainted, I sighed and pulled Noxu aside. I think Mom isn't doing too well physically. If you have time, you should take her to the hospital for a thorough checkup. Although my mother-in-law has always treated me with a hint of calculation in both lifetimes. At the very least, in my previous life, before she passed away, she left me 5,000 yuan and a house in the provincial capital. For this reason alone, in this lifetime, I hope the tumor in her body can be detected early. Perhaps there's still a chance for a cure, but I never expected that at my father-in-law's funeral, my mother-in-law would slap me in front of relatives from both families. I was completely stunned by the slap, in front of my father-in-law's tombstone. My mother-in-law glared at me with bloodshot eyes, as if I were the one who had caused his death. El Shun, you're not worthy to be the daughter-in-law of our Yu family. while your father-in-law was hospitalized with cancer, you, as his daughter-in-law, actually went back to work as if nothing had happened. How could our Yu family have married such an unfilial daughter-in-law like you? If it weren't for you, Noxu's father wouldn't have passed away so soon. Hearing my mother-in-law's unreasonable accusations and insults, I couldn't help but laugh in anger. As you said, I'm just the Yu family's daughter-in-law, while Noxu is his father's own son. If he doesn't even come back to take care of his own father, why should I, as a daughter-in-law, be responsible for serving his dad? The mother-in-law lashed out sharply. Just because you're Noxu's wife. Noxu is doing important work in the military, as a military family member. You should be filial to his parents on his behalf and hold down the fort for him. I really didn't want to argue back with my mother-in-law, so I could only turn to look at Noxu. At this point, there's no use hiding it anymore. Will you tell your mother yourself, or should I? Noxu looked up blankly, and upon realizing the implication of my words, his eyes instantly filled with fear. Please, stop talking, okay? Her mother-in-law pulled him aside and glared at me. Speak. Let her speak. I want to hear what excuse she has for not even being filial to her in-laws. Noxu, held back by his mother, could only desperately plead with me through his eyes. Don't say it, I beg you, Noxu, it's too late. The moment you chose, again and again, to make me the scapegoat and let me suffer the grievances. We were already completely even. I looked at my mother-in-law and, under Noxu's terrified and desperate gaze, told her everything. How we had a sham marriage and how I, as his wife, had covered up Noxu's secret meetings with Nova Chen, leaving out no details. You all. My mother-in-law's eyes widened, and she gasped for breath. With a thud, she fainted right in front of my father-in-law's tombstone. After my father-in-law's funeral, despite Noxu's attempts to persuade me to stay, I insisted on buying the earliest train ticket and left the city. As I was leaving, Noxu asked me with a bitter smile, "Can't you really stay until after the first 7 days of mourning?" I shook my head and replied, "I'm sorry, but after all, ours was a marriage of convenience. It wouldn't be proper for me to observe the mourning rites for your father. I think at a time like this, you should have the person you truly want to marry come instead." But why would Nova Chen come at such a time? In her previous life, she didn't want to bear the wrath of her in-laws. Nor did she want to take on the responsibility of supporting them. So, she had Noxu, under the guise of marriage, trap me by my in-laws' side. It wasn't until the in-laws passed away, with these two burdens gone, that Nova Chen revealed her true colors, forcing Noxu to divorce me and make way for her. In this lifetime, with the father-in-law passing away so early and the mother-in-law still seething with anger, Nova Chen didn't dare to cross her path even more. It's said that the day after news of the father-in-law's death arrived, Nova Chen applied for a medical aid mission at the border. Military orders are as unshakable as mountains. She wouldn't be able to return for at least 2 years. 2 years later, time had already washed everything away. She returned with honors. Yet she would always remain the purest white moonlight in Noxu's heart. This woman's calculations were too shrewd, unfortunately, in this lifetime. I had already seen through everything and no longer wished to be a mere chess piece in her and Noxu's love game. After making everything clear, I submitted a divorce application to the organization. But for some reason, Noxu kept delaying signing the papers. I moved out of the military family compound. However, Noxu was right to remind me. Before the official divorce, living together with Li Jianfeng would do neither of us any good, so I moved into the company dormitory. In my spare time, I began sorting through some fragmented scrolls I had collected from the scrap station. I planned to publish a book to let the world know that these brilliant cultural heritages belong to our Chinese nation. Decades later, if shameless countries dare to claim these cultures as their own by applying for heritage status first, this book will serve as irrefutable evidence to slap them right in the face. Little did I know, while I was secluded writing my book, a huge uproar had already erupted in the residential compound. After learning that Noxu and I were in a fake marriage, my mother-in-law found out where Nova Chen was providing aid. She actually used my father-in-law's connections to go straight to the front lines and dragged Nova Chen back. In the family compound, Nova Chen trembled as she hid behind Noxu. Her delicate, petite face was covered with bright red slap marks. The mother-in-law glared at Noxu and said coldly, "If you still acknowledge me as your mother, Today, right here, in front of everyone, cut all ties with this woman. Noxu shook his head in agony. Mom, I know you're grieving since Dad passed, but this matter has absolutely nothing to do with Nova. How can you take your anger out on her? The mother-in-law roared. How is it unrelated? If it weren't for her, you and Elle would have long been a real couple by now. I know Elle's personality well. If she were truly our Yu family's daughter-in-law, when your father was diagnosed with cancer, she would have quit her job and come back to take care of him wholeheartedly. Your father wouldn't have passed away so early. It's all because of this vixen. She destroyed your marriage with Elle and even caused your father's death. How could you still want to protect her? Mother-in-law's accusations, word by word, made Noxu and Nova Chen retreat in shock. Their faces turning pale. In this era, punishment for illicit relationships is particularly severe. Moreover, both Noxu and Nova Chen are military personnel. If their alleged inappropriate relationship were confirmed, forget about promotions. They might even be immediately discharged from the military. Noxu begged his mother-in-law to stop talking. Nova Chen was also frightened and tearfully promised to keep her distance from Noxu in the future, vowing never to disrupt their marital relationship again. Unfortunately, it was all too late. In the military family compound, all the residents were officers of the same regiment and their families. Noxu wasn't even the highest-ranking officer there. After the mother-in-law caused a scene in the family compound, Noxu and Nova Chen were suspended by the organization the next day for investigation. The investigation team also came to our unit, found me, and questioned me about the relationship between my husband and Nova Chen. I didn't kick someone when they were down, I just told the truth. Noxu and I were indeed a nominal couple in name only. On our first night as newlyweds, he told me he had someone in his heart and vowed to remain chaste for them. So we could only be a fake couple. As for whether his beloved is Nova Chen, or whether the two of them have done anything to betray their families, that I don't know. Although I didn't kick someone when they were down, unfortunately, the previous Noxu and Nova Chen were simply too high-profile in the military. The investigation team only needed to ask around slightly to gather a substantial amount of evidence. They strolled through parks together, dined at state-run restaurants together, and watched movies together. Even after marriage, Noxu paid no attention to me, his wife, yet handed over his entire monthly salary and all ration coupons to Nova Chen. The evidence is irrefutable. Soon, both Noxu and Nova Chen were discharged from the military. The house in the family compound was also reclaimed by the military. My divorce application submitted to the military was quickly approved. On the day of the divorce, Noxu, unshaven and wearing a crumpled military green shirt, looked at me with an expression full of regret. Elle, between us, is there still a chance, in the future, to start over? I smiled. Between you and me, there was never a beginning, so how could there be a future? It was already 5 years later when I saw Noxu again. After my new book was published, it became a great success. I received an invitation from the Writers Association in my hometown to return and hold a discussion session. As I entered the venue, I suddenly spotted a familiar figure at the entrance. Noxu, why is he working as a security guard here? Noxu seemed to have noticed me too, but he quickly turned away. Pretending not to see me, I didn't step forward to acknowledge him. Sometimes, pretending not to know someone is also a form of dignity for adults. However, after the symposium ended, during the dinner, my ex-husband was inevitably brought up. I heard that after he was discharged from the military back then, my mother-in-law had already pulled some strings, planning to send him to gain experience at the grassroots level. Just at this moment, Noxu's beloved White Moonlight couldn't endure the hardships of grassroots life and actually ran off with a nouveau riche. Noxu was devastated and refused to stay in the grassroots any longer. Despite his mother-in-law's objections, he sold off more than half of his family's assets to raise enough capital. Intending to venture into business, he planned to achieve fame and success, making that wretched Nova Chen regret her actions. Unfortunately, Noxu had no talent for business whatsoever. In less than a year, he had lost every penny of his capital. At this very moment, just like in the previous life, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with a tumor. Noxu sold the last bit of the Yu family's assets, but still couldn't save his mother-in-law's life. After my mother-in-law passed away, the only house left in the family was also reclaimed by her former employer. With nowhere to go, Noxu had to turn to an old comrade in arms, who helped him secure a job as a security guard. At least, the issues of food and shelter have been resolved. I heard that Nova Chen went south with that nouveau riche, thinking she was going to live a life of luxury. Little did she know, the man had already married a wife there. He only tricked her into going back to bear him a son because his wife couldn't conceive. Nova Chen was too proud and arrogant. How could she ever be content with bearing a son for someone else? Relying on her familiarity with pharmaceuticals, she secretly concocted a poison and used it to kill the nouveau riche's original wife. Just as she thought she had successfully secured her position, the original wife's brothers came knocking at her door. Without distinguishing right from wrong or demanding evidence, they immediately tied Nova Chen up, bound her with stones, stuffed her into a sack, and threw her into the sea. In those days, coastal smuggling was rampant. And every day several bodies would wash ashore. The police couldn't even keep up with the investigations. Moreover, Nova Chen was only reported missing, and no one had filed a police report for her. It wasn't until a year later, when one of the original wife's brothers was arrested for a crime, that this cold case was brought to light. However, because too much time had passed, Nova Chen's body could no longer be found. But none of this has anything to do with me anymore. Li Jianfeng has collected many precious ancient cultural texts for me again. It's time to start preparing for my second book. Fortunately, in recent years, Li Jianfeng has picked up his family's traditional trade again and opened a pawn shop, with him at home taking care of the kids. I can focus on preparing my new book with peace of mind.